here comes our Atlantis crew.
On behalf of the greatest team in the world, good luck to you and your crew on the final flight of this true American icon.
Go for main engine start. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, go, and lift off. The final lift off of Atlantis. Shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today to discuss and celebrate the 10th anniversary of the 135th and final Space Shuttle missions. So on July 8th, 2011 at 11:29 in the morning, Space Shuttle Atlantis launched from Kennedy Space Center and then docked with the International Space Station's Harmony module almost 48 hours later. The primary cargo was a multi-purpose logistics module, Raffaello, and a lightweight multi-purpose carrier. Before I get to the panel, I just wanted to give you a little bit of context about this final flight. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the dedication of the whole workforce. Teams had been working out at the orbiter processing facility, at the VAB, and at the launch pad, and really across the agency, just to process Atlantis for this very last time. I can really vividly recall the intensity about the last flight of this iconic mission. But the overwhelming sense from the entire workforce was pride, extra pride. They went above and beyond because they wanted to do the very best and make sure that the crew was brought home safely. They were going above 100% for that. And all of this, despite this, knowing that many of them already had pink slips in hand. They knew that their job would be going away once his final flight was completed. And we made lots of room at the Kennedy Space Center to accommodate guests to view this last historic launch. We put so many people across the center. There was people on the bridges, people lined the beaches. Everybody wanted to be witness to this last piece of history of the shuttle program. And I think Commander Ferguson's last words before launch included a big thanks to the KSC workforce.
Hey, thanks to you and your team, Mike. Until the very end, you all made it look easy. The shuttle's always going to be a reflection of what a great nation can do when it dares to be bold and commits to follow through. We're not ending the journey today, Mike. We're completing a chapter of a journey that will never end. You and the thousands of men and women who gave their hearts, souls, and their lives for the cause of exploration have rewritten history. Let's light this fire one more time, Mike, and witness this great nation at its best. The crew of Atlantis is ready for launch.
Doing that big loop for the last time, and Ron welcoming you all to the space station saying for the last time, and then Sandy showing the world the return of the socks and having that phone call with President Obama and leaving the American flag on the flight deck until the next astronaut launched from American soil to retrieve it. And then there was the landing, and I was there on the shuttle landing facility looking up and hearing those iconic twin sonic booms, the pre-flare maneuver, the rotating, and then the final touchdown. It was a really, really emotional moment for everyone, the convoy crew, the families, the workforce, knowing that this was going to be the very last time. And we all walked out and checked out the underside of the Atlantis and check out how close to the center line the vehicle and the landing was. And again, at that last post-flight conference, Commander Ferguson spoke again about all the efforts of the entire workforce. And I have a picture, a plaque that the crew gave to the Kennedy Space Center to thank them for all the work that they had done. So joining me to reflect on this historic mission is a crew. First, we have Chris Ferguson, Doug Hurley, Rex Walheim, and then Sandy Magnus. The journey didn't end. You guys completed a chapter to the journey that continues today. So let me get to some questions here. So Doug, let me start with you. You have the distinction of flying on the final shuttle mission and then launching in the first crewed flight from American soil in almost a decade when you flew SpaceX's Demo 2 certification mission. How has space travel changed since the close of the shuttle days? And how did the flights feel to you? And what are you excited about in this next new chapter?
Well, it's a real honor to be here and share this this video with my crewmates. It's been far too long since the four of us have gotten together. You know, it was a huge change, I think, in a lot of ways, because the way the shuttle was, by the time we flew, almost every minute of your day was perfectly scripted. We knew what the training was going to be like, and then of course the mission was completely scripted, almost down to the microsecond, it seemed. But for the Crew Dragon flight, you know, we, along with the folks at Boeing, you know, had to develop training. We had to develop the vehicle. We had to figure out what the displays were going to look like. We had to figure out how we were going to operate Dragon. And so it was a completely different feel going into the mission. And we got to the point where we were comfortable with the procedures. We got to the point where we were comfortable with the vehicle itself. And then we took it flying for that test flight. So a little bit different. I think we're starting to get into a rhythm now with commercial flights, and hopefully Boeing will launch their uncrewed test flight here very soon, hopefully in the next few months, and then we'll see that pace even continue. Things are changing rapidly, not only with the commercial sector, but of course Artemis, potentially Artemis 1 launching later this year. So it's an exciting time. It really is. It's amazing how far we've come in this last 10 years.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. It is quite an exciting time. So let me see, Chris, when asked where you thought you would be in 10 years, you responded people would be traversing back and forth to low Earth orbit. People would be spending time in orbit. We'd be utilizing commercial space flight. We would have launched or would be close to launching a heavy lift vehicle. All those predictions were true, but what is something that has surprised you about how the space program has evolved over the past decade?
You know, I would have to say, you know, I look at the way the comings and goings at the International Space Station now are just amazing. You know, I look at the month of July coming up and all the ambitious things that NASA and the international partners are doing. There's a Russian large module that's anticipated will launch. There's a SpaceX cargo flight that's coming and going. There is a Boeing flight that will be going. There's a Northrop Grumman flight that is scheduled to go. I mean, all this in the span of 1 month.
Sandy, how about you? Where do you see the space program 10 years from now?
You know, it's really an exciting question, because to the points that Doug and Fergie already made, there's so much going on now. You know, we're getting to the point now after 10 years of development, the commercial crew programs are taking off. Artemis is getting ready to take off. And so we're going to continue this transition, I think, of seeing more and more non-governmental driven activity. The government will be clearly a major factor, but you look at the Axiom 1 flight, which is a private commercial flight to the space station, and then another SpaceX flight that's going not to the space station. They're going to go do their own thing in orbit for a few days and come back. You'll see more and more. The suborbital community is getting ready to take off here soon with launching people. So we're seeing a lot more engagement in space with a wider variety of people, and that's going to have an effect, I think, on our society and how people think about the relationship to the Earth as the breadth of people that have access expands.
So Rex, STS-134 was originally slated to be the last shuttle flight, with STS-135 on deck as just a contingency mission in the event that 134 needed a rescue. How did it feel to get called for one more mission? And can you talk a little bit about what it felt like to prepare for a mission where the rescue plan potentially meant an extended stay on the International Space Station?
Yeah, it was really exciting, because when they said that STS-134 was the final flight, you know, I had volunteered to be on any of the last 3 flights, but when they named the last 3 crews, I thought, well, dang, I didn't make it. It was kind of like being in line for Space Mountain and the line closes right before you get up there. Then they started talking about STS-135. And yeah, originally we were just a rescue mission for 134, but you know, we had all the parts. We had an external tank, a shuttle, and 2 solid rocket boosters. And it's kind of like the 4th of July. When you have 1 firework left in the box, you don't leave it there. You fire them all off. We're Americans. And so I was pretty sure that we were going to fire off too. So we had pretty good confidence that we'd actually fly. And so that was really neat to make it official when they finally did tell us. And it was a interesting proposal for how we would get down. We each had a window. If we got stuck up there where there's no rescue craft to come get us, various times we'd have to stay up there. So I think I was going to be one of the first ones down, and Doug was going to be had the task of he would have to stay up for a whole year if we got stuck up there. And up then, none of us Americans never spent a year in space before, so he had the tough duty if we got stuck up there. But fortunately, everything worked out okay, and we didn't have to. Came home on the shuttle.
Well, thank you for that. So, Chris, have you been to see Atlantis at the KSC Visitor Complex? And how did you feel seeing it again after all these years?
I'll tell you, it's great. I still claim it's the 4 of ours orbiter, and we just let you guys keep it in your garage. But it is. I've been through there several times with a few groups, and that when that pre-show ends and the curtain goes up, it still gives me goosebumps. It's great to walk around it and see it. It's just a fantastic exhibit. I mean, you can get right up close and personal, and I really think it has been just a hit there at the KSC. And now SpaceX is flying, astronauts. Boeing soon will be. I think that the interest in the future of space has likely never been greater than it is now. Especially as we're on the threshold of Artemis. The first stage of Artemis just rolled into the big VAB a couple weeks ago. I mean, there's more going on at KSC than I could have possibly imagined 10 years ago. And it's just great to see Atlantis there too. It's just a great piece of history.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that. Let me go to Sandy. Can you tell us about your best memory of the STS-135 mission? Maybe your socks, or we heard a story about peach jam. Can you clue us in on that?
I don't know this story about peach jam. I don't know who came up with that. The socks thing was a flashback to Expedition 18, but I think what I enjoyed the most about this mission was the crew. I mean, working with these guys was absolutely fantastic, and we laughed so much. We trained so hard. It was a very short training session. We were all very focused, but we had such a wonderful time with each other doing it, and just listening to these guys bandy jokes. I was the appreciative audience most of the time. And then on orbit, I have never been so busy in my whole entire life. And they extended us a day, and they gave us more work to do. And we were like, you got to be kidding me. But we had fun the whole time because it was just a fun crew. And that's one of my favorite memories, just working with these guys.
Thanks. Doug, how about you? What was your favorite memory or about that peach jam?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on the peach jam too. I think, for me, I agree with Sandy. It's hard to pick just one event or one favorite because, things happen pretty quick. I think it was like 9 months from the time, we kind of knew we were going to fly until we were back. And so from a shuttle standpoint, that was pretty quick. But, it's down to maybe 2 pretty noteworthy discussions. The first was when we had the launch hold, and I remember, there was some distinct conversations going on in the crew module, and I had scrubbed almost a half a dozen times on my first flight, but never at the point where the APUs were started and we were getting ready to go. So I just looked over at Ferguson and said, the APUs are running, and then I got to look back like, hey, we'll get it sorted out like he always did, that was a pretty interesting memory. And then I think the other one, which is a little bit more solemn, was that last night we were on orbit. We had undocked and we had talked to Megan, who's in space right now, by the way, Megan MacArthur Bankin. She was our Capcom, and we were saying Chris was saying some great stuff to Mission Control, and then we were done for the night, and we were going to come back the next morning and shut all the lights off on the flight deck, and we were just looking out the window. And you think about it, every time you go to space, you just have to take it all in because you never know if you're going to go back. And it was just the 4 of us. It was kind of quiet, but yet you could just tell we were all sharing that moment together. And that, to me, I will never, ever forget that. It's still so vivid in my mind 10 years later.
Thanks, Doug. That sounds pretty special. Rex, how about you? What's your favorite memory?
There's a lot of them, like everybody said so far, the ascent and coming back home. It was all pretty amazing. And it was my first nighttime reentries. I'd never done nighttime, so that was spectacular. And to see the plasma around the vehicle when you're doing night reentry, it's absolutely amazing. And we had a agreement that I was going to be the last one to completely suit up because I got everybody strapped in their seats and stuff, and I was going to finish strapping in after the Europe burn. So I get everybody strapped in and stuff, and then we get into the plasma from re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and it is glowing orange, and flames are flicking around the windows. And I think Fergie said, "Hey Rex, you need to get your suit on." And I'm thinking, "Yeah, I know." You know, it was pretty obvious. So we keep coming back down. All of a sudden, we start turning into an airplane, and it gets some vibrations and stuff. And we usually do the entry with the one light on, so I can see my kneeboard, so I can make all the calls to keep these guys on their actions and stuff. And this time, Fergie and Doug decided they wanted it dark enough, so they turned the light off, so I couldn't see anything. So I had to remember all my calls by heart. And it's a little bit disoriented from my seat because I can't see the runway, can't see anything going on. I'm thinking, man, this is really uncomfortable. But then when we come up on the heading alignment circle, where we fly a circle and line up with the runway, and Fergie's job is to hand it over to Doug for a second. Doug flies it, and then he hands it back to Fergie, and Fergie lands it. So when Fergie hands it over to Doug, I hear Doug go, "This is so cool." And when he said, like, "Oh, we got it, no problem, we're landing just fine." So that was pretty amazing.
Thanks for sharing that. And Chris, how about you? What's your favorite memory?
There's more than just one, but let me just extend the story that Rex was just saying about getting ready to land. Sometime in there, I'm sure you all remember this. I mean, we're literally a minute and a half from landing, and there's this very loud bang that comes from the middeck, and we all were like, the last thing you want to hear, a minute away from landing a space shuttle is a very loud bang. And, fortunately, Rex, being the perfectly clairvoyant guy he usually was, looks down and says, "Oh," he says, the WCS, the toilet door just swung open and hit the ladder. And that was the loud thing. But these silly little things you never really occur in space, really do. But the ending was all fine. Hey, I have one memory that was, sort of one of the funnier things. I remember Jerry Ross handing me a Ziploc bag with the American flag with very explicit directions on what to do with that flag. And we read the directions, and Chunky knows about that flag. I hope it's sitting somewhere in a drawer of his right now. But he says, and he looks me in the eye, Jerry Ross, he says, "And when you have your interview with President Obama, don't forget the flag." So I thought, got it, Jerry. I'm all over this. So days go by, and probably 10 days later, we're gathering for this interview, and it's President Obama and a few other distinguished individuals are on, and we're on, and about 30 seconds into this, I'm thinking to myself, my hands are behind my back, and the flag is not in either one of them. How's this gonna go? And it ended up going fine, but that was just one of my interesting memories amongst many.
If you remember, Fergie, we were all working furiously, and you were calling us, "We're meeting with the president. Get in here now!" And we literally got there 5 seconds before that event started.
But you guys look good at it, I can tell you that. So, what are you going to miss the most, Sandy? Since you're up, what do you miss the most?
About being in space?
Yeah, about being in space.
Being in space. When we left 135, I was, Fergie was the last one out. It was just before him, and I had a few tears in my eyes because I'm thinking, this is probably the last time I'm going to be here, and it feels like my second home that I can never return to. Right? It's just so magical to live up there and have that experience and live there long term. Doug, you had that opportunity now. It's way different than a shuttle mission. And it's just super special, and I do miss it.
Rex, how about you?
I missed the whole shuttle team. You mentioned that, Janet, earlier, that what a pleasure it was to work with that whole team. It was a large team, and it just is a little bit different than what we have today. But it was a large team, and we all worked together, and they were launching regularly. 7 people into space regularly. And the dedication was absolutely apparent when we were training. And I remember once we were at the KSC, and this person came up to me and said, "Hey, I wanted you to know that I've been working on the shuttle program for 25 years, and this is my last day." And I'm like going, "I'm so sorry." But they go, No, don't be sorry. I am so happy I had the opportunity to do this. And that's how just about everybody felt. It was just so happy to be a part of that. And so I really missed that, being part of that shuttle team and helping getting people ready to launching yourselves, coming back and telling everybody about it.
Yeah, thanks. The workforce was incredible. How about you, Chris, what's your what will you miss the most?
It's the teamwork. There was a lot of camaraderie, I think, that went with shuttle crews. And when you sort of leave the business, things get a little more, I'll say, individualistic. But I also, I miss the operations team a lot. I think Doug had brought up earlier that, we had a unique opportunity to turn the lights off and look out the window. And, you would think, well, you guys are always so busy. How do you have the opportunity to do something like that? And the truth is we always had, these outstanding teams on the ground looking over our shoulders and enabling us to do this. And I went back and looked at the names of some of the flight directors who led the mission. And amazingly, a lot of them are still with the program. Richard Jones, Kwatsi Alabrujo, who has left, Rick Lebrode, Tony Sakachi, Courtney McMillan, that we still work very closely with in commercial crew. Chris Edelin, same story. So a lot of these folks are still around, still leading teams. This is a business that once it gets in your blood, it's hard to get it out, and it's great to still have these senior individuals around making this all happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And Doug, how about you? What will you miss the most? Well, from the shuttle program.
Yeah, it's kind of like I remember John Young saying this very early on. It's not, what you fly, but it's who you fly with. And I think, it kind of echoes what these guys have all said. It's building the team and then seeing it being completed successfully. And then, it's a bonus when you really like who you're flying with, and, you have that dynamic with a crew, and that doesn't always happen. I think people think it's magically we put crews together and they just automatically work. And, sometimes it's more of a challenge. And I think with this group, we just almost instantaneously connected, and I think it showed.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that. I do recall, like I said, that feeling. People were so honored to be a part of that last mission, and they wanted it to go flawlessly. And I think you guys made the whole mission look that way. And it looks like you guys had a lot of fun as well. So one just last question for all of you. Any last thoughts or lessons learned that you would impart to those of us on the ground here, either the workforce or around the agency? Any lesson learned or the final thoughts? Doug, why don't you go ahead and start?
I just think, we have to continue what we're doing and kind of what the shuttle program has led us to, 10 years later. It was a huge effort. We had to stay with it. We built the space station. We serviced Hubble. We launched satellites. We did a whole bunch of incredible things. And with the end of that program, now we've talked about this. We've got a vibrant commercial program in low Earth orbit. That's only getting bigger, it seems like, by the month. And then for us at NASA is to just continue this exploration phase that we're finally starting to do again beyond low Earth orbit. Going to the moon and establishing a base, hopefully there, and then reaching out into the solar system to Mars. I think those are the things that the lessons learned from the shuttle program, the lessons learned now from commercial crew, are going to lead us out into the solar system. I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, Doug. How about you, Sandy? Final thoughts or lessons to share?
Yeah, I think it's important that as we move forward and more activities taking place in space with more people flying, more vehicles flying, that we don't lose the lessons of the past, right? We all know space is hard. It's taken the commercial industry for lots of reasons, 10 years to just get on the brink of starting to launch people. At NASA, we took every shuttle mission very seriously, practically rebuilding the vehicle from the ground up, and paid a lot of attention to that. Now, maybe that was too much, and these commercial guys are going to have to figure out where that balance is. But as they do that, they should not forget the lessons that we learned in the shuttle program, because lessons in our industry are very painful. And I think we have, we're going to be learning more as a community, as the community gets broader and broader. But I would just encourage people to keep their eye on the past to inform their future actions, and take the good lessons and the bad lessons and apply them appropriately, and do new learning. And that would be very healthy.
Yeah, brilliant observation. Rex, how about you? Final thoughts and or lessons learned?
Yeah, I think I'd tag on to what Sandy said, in that it's amazing what an incredible group of people can accomplish when they put their minds to it, from the ground team, the processing team, the flight crews, the operators, and everybody working together. We learned some lessons the hard way in this shuttle program. There's no doubt about it. But we learned from them and we moved on, and we closed out the shuttle program very strongly. And that came by paying attention and being diligent. And I believe the last few shuttle flights were some of the flawless ones we've ever flown. From a hardware standpoint, from an execution standpoint, they really went well. And that's because people on all the teams worked together to get it done. And then the last thing I would say is to everybody who hasn't had a chance to fly, is what a magical place it is going to space. And it is worth the effort to get there. The things we learn are amazing on the space station. And just the adventure itself is absolutely incredible. And I hope we do democratize space so that everybody gets a chance to go there at some point and it becomes routine, because it is absolutely an amazing place.
Thank you, Rex. That's very, very inspiring. And Chris, I'll end with you. Final thoughts and or lessons learned for the group.
Yeah, spaceflight is it's definitely hard, but I'd have to say there's a lot of things that young men and women can do these days. But if you had to look at what is probably, your ability to sit back and take pride in what you have done, there is nothing like watching a rocket launch. I mean, this is where the collective intelligence of our country come together to do something that's absolutely amazing. Go into space, do whatever it does, dock to the space station, support humans for months at a time, and then come back and safely land on land or in the ocean. And then, as a participant in that, sit back and look at it and say, I have been a part of something that's truly much larger than me. It's a great feeling to have been a part of it. And I try to sort of instill a little bit of that excitement in the young men and women who come into the field right now, because they will be the ones that go and live in lunar orbit or on the lunar surface, or someday maybe even go to Mars. It's a hard business, but I'll tell you, it's just one of the most rewarding I can ever imagine.
Well, thank you very much for that, Chris. And also thanks to everyone on the panel here today. We really appreciate hearing from you and reflecting on the last and final space shuttle mission. So it might have been the last shuttle mission, but the entire team of launch control personnel were carefully monitoring Atlantis to make sure that she was ready for that final trip. The NASA launch director in charge still carried all of the same responsibility for the safety of the crew like any other previous launch. And even if he didn't know it at the time, he was helping NASA's next launch director prepare for the future. Here are retired launch director Mike Leinbach and Artemis launch director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson.
Thank you so much, Janet. We appreciate those kind words. Hello, I'm Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, Artemis launch director with the Exploration Ground Systems program here at Kennedy. Joining me today is retired shuttle launch director and my friend, Mike Leinbach. Mike, it's great to see you today.
Charlie, it's always great to be with you and the gang out here at KSC. It's like old times.
And it's really neat to see the crew today and to be thinking about and reflecting on STS-135 and that final landing of Space Shuttle Atlantis.
It was a special mission. The whole mission was outstanding, and I was reflecting the other morning about 135 and how special those four folks were and still are to me and to the rest of the program and to NASA and to the country. It was an outstanding time. It was the end of the program, so a little bittersweet, but nevertheless we did it like we planned, and it was the safest flight in the shuttle program.
Speaking of it being like that last flight, Mike, do you have like a memory, or I know I have a couple, but I have more than a couple, but I certainly have two that stand out. But do you have one as the launch director for that final mission? I mean, anything that...
Well, you remember we talked long and hard leading up to the launch day about we wanted to make it the same for Fergie and his crew that we did for all the other missions leading up to the final launch and mission. And we owed that to them to do it the same. And so we stressed that quite a bit, and we pulled that off. It was glorious to watch the launch team perform. I do remember, though, after launch, I went around and shook everybody's hand on the floor of the firing room, and I'd never done that before. And there were a lot of pats on the back and hugs and, a couple little weepy eyes. But, it was a great mission, and it sure was great seeing him back here.
It was a great mission. And like you, I have a similar memory as, after launch, leading up to 135, if you think about it, you had teams that had been there through tanking, been there through T0, and you generally have, folks that are like changing out the shift, and we go downstairs and kind of break bread together. And I remember after 135, we were going to take those pictures, right, to kind of get that historical capturing of the moment. And I remember that after the pictures were made, are taken, we all kind of stood there, and it was almost like you wanted to just savor the moment for just a little longer. You wanted to make it last. You wanted to remember it, and that's one of those memories for me that sticks with me to this day, was just realizing that this team is together for this very historic launch, maybe for the final time, like this group of people. And it was really, as you said, it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet, and you think about some of the folks on the launch team. We've been on the launch team dozens of years. I was on the launch team over 20 years myself. Mac McCaskey came from the Apollo program and still launching the shuttle, and it was to see the team pull together, stay together, and do the job right, knowing that the end was coming and that some of them would be laid off. And even in the face of that, they all pulled together and did the right thing for the good of the crew. And that's what it was about. To see them perform, though, honestly, it was just wonderful to sit back and watch a team perform. And you were the chief NASA test director, and so we shared some good times too. Absolutely, yeah. Those are some of I have some really sweet memories from the shuttle program. And when I think about shuttle, I think about the lessons learned and even how we apply them today. I guess I would ask you, what are some of the lessons learned from shuttle, Mike, that you think about? Yeah, I was thinking about this the other night too, and I think it comes down to everyone that worked on the shuttle program and an Artemis program now and SLS and any program. You need to be a responsible individual. Whether you're an engineer or a technician or a safety professional or an ops specialist, you need to be a responsible engineer, responsible person in your position. And that, to me, means you do the best job you can possibly do. If you happen to sign off on something because your job requires it, when you sign that piece of paper that says, I have reviewed that paper and I agree with everything in this, and it's as best as we can possibly do. And if everyone held that mindset of being a responsible person for themselves first, then I think that would bleed over into the rest of the team and for the good of the program, because nothing would get by. Someone would say, no, wait a minute now, this is not the right thing to do. I know better, and I need to speak up. We talked a lot about open conversations and that. I think that starts with being a responsible individual. Yeah, there definitely is as a launch director, we depend on everyone to do their job and to do their job well. Right. And then we have to all do it together too. So there's an individual piece of responsibility, but I often say it's almost like an orchestra, right? Everybody has an instrument, and each of those are beautiful in and of themselves, but it's really how they all fit together. And so you're absolutely right, Mike, and that is something that we talk about in our launch team planning for Artemis. It's doing your job and doing it well, and then looking across our team and then how we all perform as a team. You can be the best single player, right, but you got to be able to work in this team environment. I think that's really important. I remember as a young engineer, and I'd just gotten on the launch team, and I was a test director, daily operations test director, and I had a deviation that the team wanted me to sign, and I signed it, and I took it back. One open slot on the deviation was for the SPE, Shuttle Project Engineer, and that was Chris Ferry at the time, rest his soul. And I gave it to Chris, and he went through and he read it once, and he read it twice, and then he signed it. I said, gosh, Chris, you read that thing twice.
He said, that's what my signature means. It means I've read this, I understand it, I concur with it, and hand it off to the next person. That's being responsible.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So when you think about when you think about the shuttle program, what's the single greatest accomplishment?
Oh my goodness. Single.
Can you name just one? Okay, what's the top 5, right?
Well, the shuttle, yeah, the top 5. The shuttle, you know, it was the next logical step in America's manned spaceflight program, and it taught us how to live and work in low Earth orbit for 2 weeks at a time. Another thing it taught us was international cooperation and how to work with our international partners like we'd really never done before. I mean, we shook hands in Apollo-Soyuz test program, but never really worked together in orbit. And the shuttle taught us that. It taught us the value of open discussion and being responsible. If you're on a team, anybody as part of the team needs to be responsible. Living and working in low Earth orbit 2 weeks at a time, that was probably it was next logical step in the shuttle in America's spaceflight program. After that was the International Space Station, where we're permanently on orbit, obviously, since over 20 years now, for God's sakes. So the shuttle taught us that. The shuttle was ahead of its time. It was very, very capable machine. With
reusable, right?
Reusable. With that capability, reusability became complexity. And that, that causes a couple of issues. And the reusability issue for your program, we learned how to refly spacecraft. We'd never done that before, ever. Not a booster, not a rocket, not a spacecraft. And so we learned how to do that, and that was a tremendous learning curve. And we learned what to do, and we also learned what not to do in reflying spacecraft and boosters. And so it taught us a heck of a lot. And I was sorry to see it go.
I mean, I completely agree. I think about the things that you touched on. I think about, the long duration flights that we had aboard the International Space Station that really prepares us for these longer duration flights beyond our home planet. So it really was a very successful program, and something I know for both of us, we spent a great deal of our careers working on.
Yeah, you bet.
So when you think about the launch team, and if you were to think about where I am today, right, getting ready for that first launch, what was it like to lead the shuttle program, or to lead the launch team in those final missions, Mike? I know you talked about that it was the same, but there had to be a little something that felt different, knowing that it was at the end of the program.
It was at the end of the program. We dealt with that fact outside of the control room, not on launch day. There were some people that openly questioned the end of the program coming and what to do, but we dealt with that outside of the control room. Once the launch team went into the firing room and shut that door, it was game on, and it's like game day. It's like a major event game day. As a launch director, as you know, you get to sit back and watch the team perform. The launch director doesn't have a heck of a lot to do, but you're responsible for everything. So you get to sit back and watch the team perform and kibitz here, kibitz there, listen to all the discussions, chime in when you want to, leave them go when you think that's the right thing to do. It's a wonderful position created back in the early days of manned spaceflight. As that position, as that one individual who's able to sit back and watch everyone perform without a lot to do, on purpose, so you can get a sense of whether we're going the right direction or not. It's it's unlike any other position in the world. I don't want to say job because it's not a job. It was a position that I loved.
So, Mike, what was your favorite part of being the launch director?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, it was just relishing the moment, watching the team perform, reflecting on everything that occurred during that flow up to that final day, those final hours, those final minutes, and a Are we ready to go? Have we done everything we can possibly do to make this flight as safe as possible for our friends,
Right.
the astronauts that are riding this thing? And to sit back and know you have that responsibility and authority, but it didn't feel like it. It was just such a natural feeling to have that final go, no go, and to look out the windows of the Launch Control Center and look at the shuttle on the pad and think about my 7 friends on top of that thing, 4 for 135. That's how I made my final decision, thinking about my friends riding that thing. So there were so many good parts of Launch Director. Gosh, I don't know. Just driving in the morning and knowing what was about to happen. It's, you know, entering the fire room is like coming through the tunnel into a grand arena in the Super Bowl or something.
It is very similar to that. I agree with you. I talk about, you know, at the end of the space shuttle program, one of the things that I loved to do was when I would pull into the parking lot of the Launch Control Center, well, the first thing I would do is if I came through and the closeout crew was configuring their van, getting ready to go in, I like to stop.
Yeah.
And I like to talk to them.
Your guys.
They were my guys, and I like to talk to them because we were going to send them into the pad, right, with a fully loaded tank. And so I always like to stop and talk to them for a few minutes, see how they were feeling. And then when I would pull into the parking lot, very similar, little different, but similar, is I would always stop in the parking lot and kind of look out at the pad, and it always amazed me how big the shuttle looked. Like sitting out on the pad, it seemed like it was always against that dark sky.
Yeah.
And you would look out and she was just so beautiful. And you would think about, you know, we're getting ready to send the teams into the pad, we're getting ready to send the crew in. And but it was taking a moment to kind of reflect on what it was that was before you that day.
You really had to do that, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and I hope everyone did, and I'll bet they did it. To reflect on it before you actually put the headset on, to think about what we were about to do, and do it on behalf of the crew. I remember one morning I was driving in, and it was a low overcast, and the xenon lights were on. And you could see the shadow of the vehicle and the FSS and RSS on the clouds.
Oh, wow.
And I was driving and I looked at that and I went, holy cow, what are we about to do?
Okay.
And then I got together and we went and launched that day. So there's so many things in 11 years that I did the job that I just can't even begin to put them together. Just a glorious time. It was just fun.
And you had a great team.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
Had a great team. Was there ever a time where you felt like, you know, there was a tough call or you know, the countdown clock is moving and you're late in launch countdown? I mean, did those things cause you stress as a launch director, or is it one of those things where it's muscle memory and you train for it in a sim and so when launch day rolls around, You're ready to go?
It's the latter. I mean, you get so used to the clock is just another part of the deal, right? I remember once we launched with 3 seconds left in the launch window, and Sean O'Keefe was the administrator. And he came up to me afterwards and he pointed to the clock. He said, "Mike, you only had 3 seconds left." And I said, "Sean, we had 3 seconds left." And he just went, "Okay." So yeah, you're working against the clock. But I remember, you know, Bob Seek trained me. He was my mentor. I was his assistant launch director for a period of time, and he taught me that lesson. You know, you solve the problems, and then you look up at the clock. If there's time left, you're ready to go. If there's not, you come back the next day.
Right.
So the clock, you never fight the clock. The clock can be your friend, but you never fight it. It is what it is.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about day of launch traditions. Did you have a favorite one? Was it having beans after launch, or going down to the lobby? And, you know, did you have a launch day tradition?
You know, we all ate lunch after tanking. As the crew was entering the vehicle, typically we'd go have lunch, and that was sort of a potluck lunch up on the 4th floor of the Launch Control Center. So everyone brought in whatever their favorite was. You had something from South Carolina, I had something from Pennsylvania, and we all ate together. So that was fun. And traditions after launch, sure, we had the Norm Carlson beans and cornbread, which I pretended to eat. I was never a big fan of them, but no, it was a tradition, and traditions are very, very important.
I agree.
I'm sure each organization had their own traditions that led them to that point in time of launch countdown and T0. So traditions are very important. I hope you're developing them in the Artemis program.
Yes, we absolutely are. And I agree with you. I think it's really important. And you talked about the beans and cornbread. You know, for me, I did love the beans and cornbread, but the part of it that I loved the most was more the symbolic nature of it, right? That we're going down after a huge accomplishment, and we're breaking bread together. We're having a meal together, even though it was a small meal, but it was like having that time in the Launch Control Center with the team after accomplishing something like launch. You know, to me, that was really important. And so I agree with you. It's important to have those traditions, whatever your team is, right, to establish those things. And I know you're right that there were personal traditions in the Launch Control Center as well as team traditions.
Indeed, yeah, and yeah, that's very important to establish those traditions and hold on to them. And they grow over time. You'll develop new ones, or let some of them go, maybe, however it works out. But it allows people to come together and break bread, as you say, shake each other's hands, pat each other on the back, and then I always had to come over here for a press conference, and maybe you can change that and get the press conference delayed. I don't know, but so I had just a limited amount of time in the control center before I had to come over here. But and that was part of the deal. I mean, it's just part of the process. So I'm glad to do it.
So have you been to the Launch Control Center recently?
Not recently, no.
Oh, well, then you need to come.
Well, you got my phone number.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you if you'd been recently, if you'd seen any changes there.
Well, I was in Fire Room 4 with the SpaceX Launch Director prior to the first manned flight. We wanted to talk, and he invited me into the control room to see the changes they had made to Fire Room 4, which is quite significant from the old shuttle room. But Mike is a good guy. He has the right mindset to be a human spaceflight launch director, and he just wanted to chat about what it was like, sort of like this.
Right.
So yeah, I've seen Fire Room 4, and different than what we remember, but that's okay. Change happens.
Well, over in Fire Room 1, if you recall, right, during Constellation, right, you did a study that looked at the kind of the launch team, design team. Right. And we had a different layout in Fire Room 1. It's still there, and we are going to use that for Artemis 1.
Okay,
so we're going to give that a test drive and see how it goes. We've made a couple of changes, not in the layout, but maybe in the makeup of how the consoles are arranged in terms of disciplines, right? What we heard from our team was that being with like disciplines, like the electrical team and the avionics team and the cryoprop team, that they wanted to be together. But the layout is the same, so I think you'll find it very familiar when you come back and take a look.
All I need is an invitation, Charlie.
All right, well, you're invited.
Okay.
Let's see. Shuttle missions, do you have a favorite?
Shuttle.
As a launch director, are you allowed to say if you do?
Well, it has to be the last one, because those 4 folks were so special, and the way we prepared for it, and everyone pulled together, and we really truly did do it the same way on the last mission that we did for dozens and dozens prior to that, and it was very important to do it that way, and the team performed, and even with the knowledge that a lot of them were going to get let go, and it's just a very difficult situation. But the team pulled together and did it right, and I was just so proud of them. And that's got to be, from a team perspective, my favorite. Yes.
That makes sense. How about from landing day? Do you have any memories from STS-135 landing day?
Well, landing days, I always describe landing day as the best part of my job. It was That was the time we got to greet the crew coming off the vehicle. You know, you could put your hand up there and still feel the heat from the tiles from entering the atmosphere. The crew would come down the walkway and they'd be a little wobbly or something, you know, and we'd walk around and it didn't have a lot to do. It was more ceremonial. So the landing day was very, very special. And the final one was bittersweet. There is no question. But it worked fine and they were safe.
Yeah, I remember 135 landing. You know, I was the chief of launch and landing at the time. And so I was always out at I got the great honor of being in the firing room for launch and then to be at the runway for landing. And I remember, you know, usually it's kind of like the launch day, something similar, right? We would normally get you get downgrade on the vehicle and you would have, you know, different groups that were coming in to do assessments. And as the folks began to leave, as the chief of the office, I would tend to, you know, start making my way back to the office. It had been a long day already. But I remember on 135 day, I kind of like that launch day where you couldn't quite bring yourself to leave. I remember staying and we got the orbiter ready to tow back and I was still hanging around and I remember walking back with her to the OPF and kind of, you know, and it was a hot day. And every now and then as we walked with Atlantis, I'd kind of duck under the wing for a little bit of shade, you know, as we were towing her back. And I remember thinking, you know, how special that was, how that was a memory that I would take with me through my entire career, with just what it felt like to be a part of that team and to know that really was, you know, that final touchdown. The program was coming to an end. It had been a great program. It had been a great run. And to be able to kind of walk Atlantis back was just a really special thing for me.
You celebrated with the team.
Yep.
That's what it was all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have one memory. Can I tell you one more memory?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was landing of 133 or maybe 134. But I had a commander ask me, he said, Mike, can you get me out to the end of the runway and I can watch a landing standing next to the runway, next to the approach? I said, yeah, we can probably work something out like that. And so we did. We walked out, special permission, all that kind of stuff. We got out right next to the approach of the runway, and we were on the proper end, and the shuttle came in, and this is a 4-time commander, space shuttle. And he stood there and he watched it come in, and you could just tell he was reflecting on everything he had been through. And he was in awe of the machine, along with reflecting on what he had been through, and that was a very special moment. I want to say, you know, there was a tear there. I don't know if there was. A commander would never allow that, probably, but he wanted to see the shuttle land up close from the ground rather than the cockpit on one of the final missions, and we were able to do that for him.
Yeah.
That's the type of teamwork and sharing that made the shuttle launch team and landing team and processing team so special. We all shared in it. It was all of ours.
Absolutely. I mean, you felt that connection. And I will tell you, for me, that day that I walked back, and there was a number of people who walked with us as we headed back to the OPF, it was a day that was in awe of the machine and the team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
And there were definitely tears and laughter along the way. It was a very special time. It was an incredible time in my career. I spent really from the time I came to Kennedy Space Center as a young woman right out of school until the space shuttle ended in one role or another supporting space shuttle. And then now to sit here as the Artemis Launch Director and think about returning to the moon, returning humanity to the moon.
Good stuff, huh?
It is good stuff. And so many of the lessons we talked about, you know, believing in the team and just, you know, what you can accomplish when you have a group or a team that is dedicated to the mission, that does their work with passion, with intention. It's really amazing what you can accomplish. And I see that same thing in our Artemis team.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a gift to a launch director.
Yes. Yeah, I've done some poking around, and people are very, very proud to have you as their launch director, and have all the confidence in the world. And you're America's manned spaceflight launch director. That's pretty good stuff.
That is pretty good stuff. And it is a job I feel so blessed to have. And I am so lucky that I've had, you know, wonderful mentors and coaches and, you know, individuals that have helped me. I mean, you and Bob Seek and so many others, but especially when it comes to the launch director role. I mean, you've been so helpful to me, and I'm so indebted to you and to Bob for always sharing so openly with me.
Sure.
As launch directors, we certainly get the privilege to say the magic words, "We are go for launch." But what truly makes our job so special is the team we get to lead. Our launch control team, since the shuttle program and now with the Artemis program, was and is truly composed of amazing and incredibly hard-working individuals. It is my honor, and I know it was Mike's as well, to be your launch director. It was amazing to be part of launch control team during the shuttle program, and I am so looking forward to leading this team for Artemis. Back to you, Janet.
It was bittersweet to say goodbye to NASA's shuttle program. I was honored to be a part of several missions and to get to know many of our employees, some who spent their entire careers working the orbiter's 135 missions. This special look back is a tribute to all of them. When we close this chapter in our nation's space history, we started new ones. The Kennedy Space Center has transformed from a place that served only government launches to a vibrant multi-user spaceport, opening space up to commercial companies with new technologies. We're launching new dreams. We're going back to the moon, and this time to stay. And soon, we're going to be seeing some space tourists. Thank you for joining us and sharing these memories today. But remember, you can spend more time with Atlantis at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. She may be grounded, but she can still give you some goosebumps. Thank you.